All right, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, March 3rd, 2024. Let's go ahead and jump back to yesterday and see what happened here on the charts. Now, remember, we had a lot of bearish clues from the highs. We were expecting the market to try and continue to push lower. We did have an expectation at some point that one of our roadmap levels below would become a support that could lead to a larger bounce or an attempt for the bulls to bounce and push things back up. But we had already, coming into the open, got just about a 40-point sell-off, right? So we were expecting a pullback, and we were getting a pullback if we go all the way back to the highs of the beginning of the week. And then when the market opened, we basically just had a little bit left in the hopper there, and then they kind of turned and came all the way back up. So let's look at what happened. We were expecting a continued pullback coming into the open, and the first opportunity you got was a short. Here's the open, right off to the tick, right off that retracement or extension level that we had on our charts, right? And this little shaded area was a very critical zone that I said if ideally the bulls stay above it, and they can get through 50% of last week, which was up here. We were expecting that maybe this pullback was a short-lived pullback, kind of like how it's been for weeks and months on end. We get a big sell-off and then the bulls jump right back in, right? So this was an area that we were expecting to see a potential rotation from, and if the bulls couldn't defend from there, we were targeting down into each of these roadmap levels below, right? So let's take a look. We got a hold right off the back end of the middle of that range, which was a discrete level. Held it to the tick. And let's zoom in here. I know it's a little harder to see because of the range. And then from there, you had beautiful opportunities to just short. And remember, our bias yesterday was to be bears. And if we go to our news report, what I said was, at some point, if the market starts to show us some bullish clues, it won't be surprising to see them try and go ahead and push back up through this area and get back up through the 50%. And if that happens, we've got plenty of opportunities to be bulls, even if we're in a pretty heavy market, right? So we sold off. You had plenty of opportunities in here to get short off the back end of the FMA, even the back end of our roadmap level here as it broke through and kissed it to the back end. You got a great push. Maybe you would have captured 10, 20 points to the downside if you actually shorted right off the back end of our expected support, which turned into expected resistance, right? We were pulling back into it. It just chugged right through. It was a super, super strong sell-off. And then they came to the back end of it. And right at the open, you could have shorted that and grabbed this whole push, which again, would have been just about 20 points, maybe 15 points. And then it got a little tricky because the bulls actually jumped back in. And so the low of the day was 2 points from our next expected support, right? So it was just a little too bad that we missed out on trying to get a trade in that area, but they made the low of the day 2 points in front of our roadmap level. And then what you should have noticed, and this is going back to price action analysis, you should have noticed that once we made this low in the market here, the bulls started to actually push and make higher lows and higher highs, right? So we had nothing but a heavy sell-off, heavy sell-off, heavy sell-off, and then we make this low of the day, and then we start getting higher lows. So if we zoom out and look, higher low, higher low, higher low. Now price is getting back through one of our scaffolding levels, getting up through it, right? Pulling back, and when it pulled back, it held above the scaffolding level, and now we have a higher low, higher low, higher low, higher high, higher high. It started to give some clues that this might be a rotational spot in the chart, right? So I'm not saying that I would have been aggressively buying the market because I saw a higher low and then a higher low, but once we started to actually get back up through this roadmap level and hold the 200, and I could look back at that point and say, well, look, we keep making higher lows, higher highs, and we're recovering back up through the 200. That might have been a good chance to go ahead and try some longs, because you're noticing that this heavy sell-off that was really, really strong, look, it's almost like a straight line down, right? And then we kind of continue straight line down, and then all of a sudden, whoops, didn't mean to draw that. And then all of a sudden, it starts to kind of push and make these higher lows and higher highs, right? And then finally, we hold right off the 200 moving average and then break through the VWAP. So you did get some good long opportunities at the end of the day, kind of like what I said in the news report. If we start to see some clues for the bulls, we could see an attempt to rally back to 50% of the week before, and you'll have really good bullish opportunities. And sure enough, if you look at what happened at the end of the day, held the 200, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times on the short time frames here. We held the 200. You could have went ahead and jumped in. Then we held right above the FMA here multiple times, and you could have captured maybe a 5, 10, 15 point push depending on where you got in, right? So that's basically how yesterday went. Our expectation for a big sell-off kind of happened more so in the pre-market, right? And then once the market opened, we got another maybe 20 points out of it. And then this little bullish attempt came in right here at the end of the day. All right, so that was yesterday. That brings us here into the pre-market for this morning. And what do you know? We're holding right off that roadmap level, nearly to the tick here for how many tests now? Basically for the whole night, the bears have not been able to pull price back below our roadmap level at 47. All right, so that's where we stand right now. Let's go ahead and jump up to the higher time frames and see what they have to say for this morning.